Hello and welcome to Tragedy to Triumph podcast with Dave Roever. I am Kim Chapin, your co-host. I am here with my very special father, Dave Roever.
Hey, Kimmy, my very special daughter. And we got a wonderful guest today.
We do.
It's a miraculous friend that he has an unusual story, and it's one that this whole nation is aware of and needs to be reminded of every now and then.
Yeah.
And his name is Captain John Arroyo, retired. He was a Green Beret, and boy, his story is shocking. And he's one of the best friends I've ever had. I love him. We always enjoy the Army-Navy game. Well, I won't get into that right now. But anyway, he'll be on here in just a few minutes.
He is. And he is the podcaster extraordinaire of A Life Transformed. We're really excited to hear his story. It's just powerful from start to finish of how God, even from a very young age, had his hand on his life. Yeah. And then to watch how he has grown and God has opened doors, even right in the middle of incredible tragedy and incredible, pain. We see this perseverance in such an amazing man. So I'm excited.
I've known him for a long time. I knew him whenever he was just getting his feet in the water of ministry and walk with Christ, and to see where he is today. He's quite the mature man of God that he is. Got a wonderful wife named Angel.
Yeah.
They're living in Florida, and we'll be on with him in just a moment. But I would like to let people know that we appreciate them watching. And 2 weeks ago, we had on Dr. Kathy Cook, one of the most amazing guests I'll ever be on a podcast. Dr. Cook is one of the speakers for Turning Point USA. She has her own ministry, and if you have not seen that podcast, go back a couple of weeks and take a look, because I tell you, it's life-changing, very transformative, and she's one of the most candid, honest people I've ever met. And our history together is kind of like with John. It goes back in the early days of her ministry as was John's early days of his ministry. And
it kind of seems like a theme that, and I know since I was a kid being raised in ministry and raised on the road, you were speaking in high schools, but you never did it alone. You always had someone that you took under your wing, and whether it was, preparing them for, to be a high school assembly speaker or a life coach or a ordained minister of the gospel, you have always poured out your knowledge, your time, and all of your experiences into others. And I think that is such a beautiful thing that you've always done, is you've never just kept it to yourself. You've always been like, I'm going to share this.
Thank you. I would have been awkward trying to say that for myself, because it sounds like some kind of a special thing I do. It's just a natural gift. It's not something that I force myself to do. I look at Paul, who mentored guys like Timothy and took him with him. Nothing is better than OJT, on-job training. Yeah. And I was able to do that with Dr. Cook, able to do that with John Arroyo. My connection with John's especially important because we were both military, both special forces. He was in the Army, I was in the Navy. And I brought out from my archives my black beret. He was a Green Beret and I was a black beret. So I put it on the table just as a little interest for those that are watching on YouTube. But for those of you that are listening at the podcast on the other platforms, it's a beret sitting on a black beret with my military special forces patch for the U.S. Navy brown water black beret patch. And it's sitting on a skull, a 3D skull that was manufactured for a friend of mine who had his eye socket blown out. And he gave me that 3D skull. I thought it was something to have a little fun with.
It is interesting. And that is your original.
That's my
beret.
original. Yeah, that's when I wore on the river, whenever I chose to wear a beret, not a helmet. And but anyway, I don't want to put this off much longer. I want to get John in here as quickly as I can.
Absolutely. Well, if we had a live audience, I would, definitely say clap and let's welcome our guest. And if, I don't know, maybe we can arrange to have some clapping here in just a minute, because this man truly deserves a standing ovation. We are excited to have John Arroyo with us. And again, A Life Transformed. You can go to his website, alifetransformed.com, learn all about John. But for the meantime, how about you learn for yourself?
Yeah, let's welcome John into this. John, God bless you, buddy, all the way from Florida. You went from
Yes.
Texas. Most people go from New York to Florida. You went from Texas to Florida. What's the difference?
You know what? I'm not down on the strip like Daytona or Orlando. There's not much change. And my wife was actually kind of confused with that. She said, "What is going on? I thought we were leaving the tundra of Texas to move to Florida, and it's not much difference. The only difference is here is that we went from a quarter acre of land to 20 acres of land. And and I'm sure you know this, Dave. I'm sure Brenda did the same to you. You can be evangelist, you can be Captain John Arroyo, you can be Green Beret John Arroyo, but when you get home, the trash needs to get thrown out and the lawn needs to get thrown. And there's 20 acres of land, and my wife loves to tell me, "Hey, you wanted 20 acres, grab that weed eater and get after it." Yeah.
John, that is classic advice right there. You're just John at home, or jump to it, John. Anyway, so good to have you on board here today, buddy. Kim and I both are always looking for special guests, but I want our viewers to know you are above and beyond special. Tell them how we came to meet each other.
Oh, wow. I was injured at the second mass shooting on Fort Hood military base. There has been two shootings. The first one was with Dr. Hassan, the doctor that shot 30 people. And then 5 years later in 2014, April 2nd, 19 of us were shot. And when I was recovering at Brooke Army Medical Center, which you are very familiar with, as I was recovering at Brooke Army Medical Center and the Fort Sam campus there in San Antonio, Texas, I was introduced to a church there in Seguin. And actually, they came to help me. They came to my bedside, and I started attending their church. And the pastor says, "I got my buddy coming over. His name's Dave Reaver." I was like, "Dave who? Dave Rover? Dave what?" And so he said, "My buddy Dave Reaver's going to be here with us, and he's going to do the wild game cookout. I'm going to introduce you to him." And so we met at that wild game luncheon. And when you spoke, I had honestly, to this day, have never, ever, ever been in a presentation like yours. The way God uses you, the way God uses your story with humor, with tears. The way God used you in my life is you had me crying 1 minute and then you had me laughing the next minute. And my heart was just so full. And I was like, "Who is this man?" And I have to know him. Well, before you went on stage, the pastor introduced us. And in the middle of your presentation, you stopped and at the time I was a lieutenant, and you said, "Lieutenant, stand up." And I stood up, and you said, "You and I will work together in the future." And then you went on like I stayed standing, like you moved on, and I was like, is that it? But when God does things, we live in an instant message culture. So I thought Monday morning I was going to get a call from Dave Reaver's office telling me, "Hey, your assignment up here in Fort Worth, Texas, and Hurst, Texas, is to come work for Reaver Ministries." But it would be 4 years later. 4 years later, I actually attended one of your retreats where you work with the troops. I'm one of those that you helped put back together. So Dave, that's how we met, and that's how we connected. And then from that retreat, you invited me on staff.
Well, that's one of the smartest things I ever did is get to meet John Arroyo. Kim, do you have any questions for John?
So, John, how long were you in the hospital? I mean, I know that your injuries, maybe tell our listeners what happened exactly, kind of walk us through that day and then just what your recovery looked like.
Yeah. So 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the military base, Fort Hood, I was exiting my vehicle and I was going to my unit headquarters, and I hear shots fired, and I turn my head in the direction where I heard the shots fired. So I'm pretty much looking towards my 1 o'clock. So I'm looking towards my 1 o'clock. And what's happening is I was in First Medical Brigade, so my organization was separated by a road that I was trying to look up. So I'm looking towards the 1 o'clock up this road that separated my organization, which is First Medical Brigade, from a transportation unit because I had heard shots fired. And I'm looking up this road, and a car comes from that road, but no one thinks they're in danger on base. I mean, I didn't when I heard shots fired. And so I'm looking to where I heard shots fired. And this car pulls up. I see the car, but I take my attention off the vehicle and I turn it back to that road. And the next shot I heard ripped through my throat. That day, soldier was on a shooting spree, shot 19 of us, took a 45 caliber through my throat that severed my jugular vein, went through my voice box, and stopped in my right shoulder. When I was on the ground, as my life was pouring out, and we know, based on what those 66 letters say in the Bible, that the life is in the blood. So when you lose your blood, you lose your life. And so as my life is pouring out, I hear this audible voice, and the audible voice says, "John, get up or your wife is going to die." I didn't know what I was experiencing in the moment, and I didn't know that I was actually hearing Jesus speak to me. Later on in the revelation, I recognized that Jesus was actually speaking to me. But I hear it again, second time. Why did God have to speak to me 2 times? Because we don't always listen the first time. So he said it, "John, get up or your wife is going to die." And Dave and Kim, you're very familiar with this. A lot of times when life is happening and we're bleeding out, it's not always what's going on with just us. And Dave, you know this from being a warrior, a lot of times the focus is on us. But during that time, 6 months before I was shot, my wife lost both her parents 9 days apart. So we had been in North Carolina for 15 years and we were transitioning, or in the military terms, they call it PCSing. We were moving stations, and it was our first move in my entire 15 years. And so we left Fort Bragg, North Carolina to come to Fort Hood. And when we left North Carolina, both my mother-in-law and father-in-law both died 9 days apart. 2 years before that, my brother-in-law and my father-in-law were hunting, and my father-in-law loads his gun, he sets it down, and the gun goes off and it kills my brother-in-law. So my wife lost her brother, and then 2 years later, her mother and her father, 9 days apart. And then we left North Carolina, where our complete infrastructure was, and we moved to Texas, and we were only there for 5 months, and I'm on the ground and my life is pouring out. And essentially what Jesus was telling me was, if you don't get up off the ground, your wife is going to take her life. And I understood it now, and Kim, I'll let you interject right here because I think this is a good point. But the reason why Jesus was telling me that my wife was going to take her life is because as a Green Beret, I deployed 3 times, just like Dave, you deployed to Vietnam. But I brought war home. And my dad died when I was a young boy, and my dad was an alcoholic. And in the military, sometimes the culture could be alcohol. And so what I did is I did what Daddy did when I brought war home. I also brought alcohol into my home. And so my wife, during those times when I had brought war home, our kids were getting in trouble. I blamed them. I blamed my wife. And my wife had attempted suicide twice back when I was a mean, angry drunk. And so Jesus was saying, get up or your wife is going to die. And I'll stop right there in case you have any questions.
Well, there's parts of this story I haven't got to hear before. So for those who are listening, I'm just as moved as you are, because I know that getting over hurts is one thing. Getting over trauma sometimes is another. And being the wife of a first responder, even though I'm not a wife of a military, my husband's never been in the military, but he is a firefighter, a paramedic. And for years, we've talked about what the outcomes are for secondary traumas. And as a spouse of a first responder or, someone who's been in the military, those traumas are real for the family as well. But to know what Angel has walked through, we need to have her on as our guest, because I love you, John, but I really do want to talk to your wife. I think there's some powerful things there that our listeners need to hear, especially I think the women listeners or spouses need to hear sometimes, because it can be very formidable to not just, watch the one you love so much hurt, but then you're taking on some of that hurt as well.
Let me add this real quick because I think it's important for your listeners. And Dave, if you don't mind, I'll just take a second.
Please take all the time you want.
So, and we'll go back to what happened when I got up off the ground and what was going on in those moments, because that's also important for your listeners to hear, because it was easier to die that day, right? Same with you, Dave, right? God, I still believe in you, but in those moments, it was easier to die. But when I got up off the ground and I started walking out my life, what you see today, there was a lot of people early on in my life. So I'm kind of jumping forward, but this is important at this moment as we're talking about my wife. There was a lot of people that started to tell me, well, God saved your life and God's got a plan for your life. And I was a baby Christian. I was a retired Green Beret, 20 years, but I was a baby in the ministry. And so anytime somebody with a title told me, God told me to tell you, I listened to them. I believed them. I trusted them. And so they started telling me, your wife, hey, John, you got a call in your life. You're an evangelist. God's going to use you, and so then they started telling me, well, according to 1 Timothy chapter 3, this is what the home of a bishop should look like. This is what a home looks like for a man of God. And so what did I start doing? I started fixing myself up and telling my wife, like, hey, get it together, girl, get it together. Well, when back in the day, we were heavy drinkers back in the day. And, when I brought war home and I brought the alcohol home, I brought it home to my wife, and she, I was like, hey, you want to hang with me? You got to grab one of those cold ones. And so she was affected by the alcohol as well. And as everybody was telling me that my home needs to look like this and my home needs to look like that, and my wife is dealing with the trauma from losing her parents and everything that happened with the shooting, I started trying to make my wife into God's image by telling her, well, hey, there's expectations on our life now. Where everyone's telling us that here's what we're doing, and this is what our life needs to look like in 1 Timothy chapter 3, and blah blah blah. And what was happening is my wife continued to drink, and I didn't. I stopped drinking, but she kept drinking, and I was like, hey, you need to get this together, because God's got a call in our life. And then one day, I just felt like in prayer, God had a conversation with me. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, oh, God, man, I'm going to church. You called me and I'm going to tell the world about you. And he said, well, what about your wife? And I said, oh, Jesus, hey, look, man, we're going to get it together. Just give us some time. We're getting better. And he said, you're trying to make your wife into my image, and I'm trying to heal her heart. That alcohol has nothing to do with an addiction, but it has everything to do with numbing the pain. I'm trying to heal her heart, and you're trying to make her into my image, and you're working against me.
Wow. Wisdom, John. That's wisdom. Stunning.
And so it was a process.
Yeah. And that's a good term for it. Well, she's a sweetheart. I know I love her. She's a wonderful lady. She's come a long way. You both have, I tell you.
Yes, sir.
So, John, tell us where you are. Obviously, you've relocated to Florida, but tell us what your nonprofit is doing and how you're helping, other military families. It's very broad reaching what you're doing with your podcast. But give us some insight of, kind of what you're doing right now in ministry.
Okay. I'm going to take 30 seconds to tell you what happened when I got off the ground. Yeah. So I get up after I heard Jesus. I didn't stay on the ground because it would have been easier to die that day. But I start walking. I'm looking for help, and there's a soldier walking towards me. It's 30,000 soldiers on this base, and I'm looking for help, and I only see one soldier walking towards me, and we're in the same uniform. So it's really hard to, I think right now in our current culture, it's really hard to differentiate who the enemy is. And so this one soldier's walking towards me. He gets 10 feet in front of me and he stops, and he's looking real hyper vigilant. And it's a soldier that shot me. And Jesus blinds him. I was on staff at Open Door Church with Troy Brewer, and Troy told me, He said, John, if God can make blind eyes see, he can make seeing eyes blind.
Yeah.
And so this looked at me, looked around, God blinded him, and he walked in the building, shot 3 more people that day. He shot 19 of us. And so to answer your question today, I'm doing what your dad did. I'm turning my pain into purpose. You know, one of the things about what God does is God doesn't always stop the bullet. He doesn't always stop the grenade from going off in your face. There's some people who have been allowed to suffer. And and it's not fun, it's not good, it doesn't feel good. But there's some people that God has trusted with suffering. And why? And it's because everything that your dad's ministry is all. Actually, Kim, it's your ministry too. I mean, you grew up in it and you lived it. I mean, so and it's not even a ministry; it's just a lifestyle. It's what you were born into. But it was always about 2 Corinthians chapter 1, I believe it is. And if I get the address wrong, I apologize. But it's comfort others with the comfort with which we were comforted. And I've heard that from stage many times from this man Dave Roever. But the truth is. Second Samuel chapter 5 says that, and David perceived he was king and that the Lord established his kingdom for the sake of the people. What does that mean? That means when David was established as king, all the suffering, everything he went through, even though he was anointed, everything he had to run, everything he had to go through was never so that God could put David in a palace and give him a building with 30 bedrooms and bathrooms and gold, but it's always for the sake of the people. So David, Joseph, Dave Roever, John Arroyo have been allowed to suffer for the sake of the people so that we can take our scars, take our brokenness. God can heal our hearts, heal us, and then send us back and deploy us right where we came from because we smell like the sheep. And that's exactly what God has done. And that's what a Life Transformed is doing. We're doing nothing different than what your dad is doing. We're just going where the door opens and taking hope and healing to a broken world. But I want to say this because this is also important. Taylor, can you pull up that first picture that I sent you? Here's this photo that you're going to see, and it's called a Life Transformed, and that's the name of our organization. But it's a photo. This photo that you're looking at right now, it says gangs, war, wounded, redeemed. The war that most people fight is not the one in the military. It's not the one with first responders. It's the one you grew up in. Mommy, daddy stuff. My dad died when I was my dad died when I was a young boy, and I didn't recognize because my dad wasn't there how much I missed not having a father. One of the pastors that I was on staff with at Open Door said this. He said, show me a man or a woman without a father, and I'll show you a man or a woman without identity. Show me a man or a woman without value, and I'll show you a man or a woman without a mother. Today, our military, our first responders, our students in school, there's a fatherless society. And the brokenness that's happening through the fatherless society, these kids are going and they're looking for identity. They're looking, which is why they live here, which is why they're chasing likes. And that's what our organization does. Our organization goes in and we don't only deal with the wounds from war, but we deal with the wounds from the war that came from your home, from being sexually abused, from being rejected, from not having a father, not having a mother. And God has given us steps, curriculum, self-care steps, life skills to be able to help them walk through living a whole and resilient life.
Well, John, it's coming from an experience, not from a textbook. You know what you're talking about because you've been there, done that. And I'm very, very moved by your recollection of what you're talking about. I have learned after many, many, many years, since 2001 in particular, that most of the problems that military deals with warriors in current, as they serve in active duty, is that they don't bring problems. The military didn't start the problems. Those problems are brought to the military by these people in dysfunctional families, difficulties that are faced long before you ever get in the military. In fact, a lot of them tell me the same story like you did. It's go Army or go jail. And, so boy, it really gives the Army a lot to work with there, so. But the truth is, John, God let you go through things that today makes you the man you are. You talked about that a while ago. You touched on it, that God doesn't stop the bullet that took out your whole neck and everything else, left you with one arm doesn't work. He didn't stop the bullet that blew the grenade 6 inches from my right face and covered me with white phosphorus. He doesn't stop the things like that. And I'm going to bring in what I bring in so often, and I've done it on previous podcasts, but it was the night I was on Trinity Broadcasting Network with Jan Crouch, and she said, Dave, you know why God let you be scarred, maimed, and burned? And it really ticked me off that she would ask that, because I didn't know. I did not know why God let me be scarred, maimed, and burned. I knew he didn't do it, but I knew he didn't stop it. And I think, John, that you'll agree that God allows those things to happen for a reason. And she said that, set me up with that question. And I thought to myself, I didn't say it out loud, but I thought to myself, no, I don't know why God let me be scarred, maimed, and burned, but this blue-haired wonder sitting on his couch is going to explain it to me. I was so mad at her, could have pinched her head off, but it wasn't a Jerry Springer show. So she proceeded. She said, Davey, he didn't do it to you, but he didn't stop it because, and I've described it this way many times, John, the because became the fulcrum that would balance taking my life or God giving me a new hope in life. Either her words would be words of life or words of death, because if she'd said the wrong thing, I would have gone to my hotel room that night and I would have taken my life. I'd already tried it once, and I would have succeeded. It wasn't my fault that I didn't succeed in suicide. The doctors intervened in the hospital. I didn't know that they were aware, but I'd pulled out the tubes that were keeping me alive. And I was trying to kill myself, and they caught me. This time, I could have succeeded. There would have been no doctors in that hotel room. I would have ended it all because I was so suicidal. It had been for 20 years. This is 20 years after my injury, John. 20 years later. It's hard for me to talk about. And she said, he didn't stop it because he knew he could trust you with the scars. John, God didn't stop that bullet from ripping through your neck because he could trust you with that scar. He could trust you with the pain that would follow. I've seen pictures of you in that hospital. They didn't have pictures on phones. We didn't have phones, in those days, iPhones, smartphones. Everybody's got pictures of everything in the world. They got 4,000 pictures on their phone, probably as an average. We didn't have a phone. We didn't run around with cameras in our pockets, so very few pictures from my era. But I've seen a few of them, and I can tell you this. You and I shouldn't be here in the natural. For every good intention of every good doctor, they shouldn't have pulled either one of us through, but God. And those two words, but God, changes the whole spectrum. I got a little girl sitting across from me that watched her daddy struggle with suicide. Even though she didn't see me attempt it, she knew she knew the state of mind I was in, would pray outside my bedroom door. I found out later she'd pray outside my bedroom door that God would not let me hurt myself. John, we're here for a reason, you and me. That shooting at Fort Hood, that second shooting that took you down, didn't take you out. It took you down, but didn't take you out. The Bible speaks of being cast down, but not destroyed. Cast down. That's not dropped. That's thrown down. We weren't dropped, Bubba. We were thrown down. We were shattered. We were cast down, but not destroyed, because God takes our tragedies and puts us back together into triumph. And John, your story is remarkable. There's so much more. Anything you want to add before we close this out?
Yes. It's real important for people to know that they're going to be okay, right? They just got to get up.
Get up. That's words.
There's a photo that you're also going to see, and it's a picture of me and my family. And as you look at this photo, it's important for you to understand, because as I laid on the ground, during that time as a young soldier, especially as an orphan in my heart, I tried to create an identity because I didn't have one passed down. I didn't have a legacy passed down. So I had to create one. And if you do it in an unhealthy way, you try to do what the world says. You try to be the next Kim Kardashian. You try to chase likes. A good majority of the world will tell you that if you have this car, this house, these letters after your name, that if you have this much money in your bank account, then you made it. This is what life looks like. And as I laid on the ground, as my life poured out and I heard, "Get up or your wife is going to die," one thing that I didn't think about, or the things that I didn't think about, were all the things that consumed my life. I didn't think about the social media. I didn't think about the posts. I didn't think about the money I had in my bank account, all the stuff that consumed me. I didn't think about it. The only thing I thought about when I thought I had seconds to live were the people that I sacrificed the most.
Wow.
And as you look at this photo, you see that in this photo is the woman that attempted suicide, the kids that were like oil and water with me, that we fought, the ones that left my wife and I, which is why she attempted suicide, because she couldn't believe that the kids that she raised would walk out on her, and they did. And they're now in this photo, they're on the stage. But what I didn't know and what I didn't recognize, that is now a revelation to me, is in this photo, there's two little girls that were not even a thought yet. And I didn't know that when I made a decision to get up, that I was making a decision for my entire legacy to live. That I was fighting for those little girls, and so are you. So the message that I leave with you today is to get up, because the world needs you, and so does your family.
Get up. John, how can they get hold of you?
Go to alifetransformed.com, and that's where I'm at. And that's it. Go to alifetransformed.com.
Well, you've got a wonderful book out. You've got all kinds of material. You got great stuff. If they do that, they'll find out how to get those things, right?
Yep. It's right there, right on the side. Right.
Well, John, thank you. Kim and I are deeply moved and impressed with your spirit, attitude, and your quality of delivery. You're a great spokesperson for the cause of Christ and the cause of military. You've done military presentations all over the world, I guess. I don't know where all you've been, but it's a joy to have you on board today. And I thank you for your time. And I pray to God that people who see this podcast be encouraged, especially young men that don't have a dad at home, especially young warriors that think there's no hope. Kim, it's been an amazing story, hasn't it?
It has, absolutely. And if you liked this episode, definitely want to encourage you again, go to alifetransformed.com. You'll be able to subscribe to John's podcast there, as well as see his materials and ministry products that he has available. Also, to push you towards daveroever.org, that is our website. You can listen to this podcast as well as all of our others in our archives there. We encourage you to like and subscribe to our podcast, share it with your friends and family on social media.
And comment too. So let's hear from you.
Absolutely.
We'd love to hear from you.
As long as it's nice stuff, only say nice things. we only want the good stuff, guys.
It's funny, Kim. I remember back when we did a series of programs that were released on VHS in that day, and we did coverage of the bus crash, the worst bus crash in American history, where 27 kids were killed on a school bus. And we did a lot of programs. One was called The Satanic Web, and boy, that one stirred up all hell against us. And guys like Geraldo were big in those ideas and things, but matter of fact, it was Geraldo or me that would do the coverage of the bus crash, and the families chose me. Mm-hmm. And that series was called A Precious Loss. But anyway, after doing that Satanic Web, we had all these hate mails and death threats by the score coming in. Yeah. Finally, so many phone calls, we'd say, take a number and get in line. I love stirring up the devil. That's when you know you're making progress. But I told him, I said, if anybody lands hate mail on my desk again, you're fired. So I never saw it. So I invite people, if you want to write hate mail, go ahead, because I'll never look at it. I let the staff, they just discard it. All that said, we have so many viewers that love us, and we love them. And I do hope that they will subscribe. And please do. Take a time, subscribe, and share it with your friends, because we're brand new at this. We've only been doing this first a year. We don't have a large following. Now we do, our reels get tens and tens times tens of thousands of people, but we're trying to build a strong podcast because we bring to you things that are relevant. We're not going to waste your time. You're not going to hear a bunch of F-bombs. You're not going to hear people talking about sexual behavior, and you're not going to hear music that's going to be lewd and crude and rude. And you're going to hear hope. You're going to hear faith. You're going to hear stories of success out of tragedy when no one believed it was possible. And my own story, you don't live through a hand grenade because you're tough. You don't live through a hand grenade because you're smart. You live through a hand grenade because God had a plan for your life. He's got one for your life too. So Kimmy, one more time, close us out, and I won't bring us back to have to do it again.
Well, again, just you're welcome to go to our website, daveroever.org, for this and many other great resources there, Dave's books, videos, as well as our library of podcasts. Again, we'll see you next week.